And his judges are in cahoots with the opposition to delay next month's election and force a coalition government by stoking chaos through deliberately controversial judgments. On Game Plan 2017 tonight, our analysts look at these controversies and its implications, and we ask you tonight, is the executive justified in its allegations against the judiciary? Talk to us. The hashtag is Game Plan 2017. And on Twitter, you can text us on 22422. Our guest tonight, Herman Manyora, a political analyst, Gabriel Muduma, also a political analyst, Manu Magoma, a political analyst, and Felix Odiambo, an electoral law expert. Thank you all for making time for us tonight. Well, let's begin with the pronouncements by the Jubilee leaders in Baringo today. And this is apparently triggered by Friday's High Court ruling that cancelled the ballot printing tender for the presidential election awarded to Al Ghuraib and directed that the tendering process be done afresh.
Including the judges, including the IEBC and the opposition. There is nobody who has not been aware that the election shall be on the 8th of August 2017. And I am saying, Kenyans are ready for that date. You change and mess with that date, we will not accept you denying the people of Kenya their constitutional right to elect their leaders.
Is Justice Maraga ready for elections on the 8th of August, or is part of the games now being played by the characters in opposition who don't want an election on the 8th of August? We want simple answers because we want a peaceful country.
Those indeed are weighty allegations from the executive. And I'll start with you, Manyora. What do you make of those remarks?
Home stretch, I think the heat is getting too much. And I think it's good that our leaders realize that at times like this, you can set the country on fire. So you be very careful what you do. Because if Justice Maraga had said the things is accused of having said, that would be wrong. But of course he has clarified, and that's not the case. But even if he had said, it wouldn't even be good either for the president again to talk the way he's talking. He's still the president. He's a candidate, yes, but he's the president of this country, and therefore it will not be good for him to speak the way he's speaking. Look here, and even the deputy president is saying we can't allow it. You see, if there was a dispute, including the date of election, this country has a constitution that gives the power to the judiciary to make an interpretation. It can't be Hurus or Rutos or Railas. If there's a dispute, including whether or not the election should be held, the only organ allowed by law to make an interpretation and a pronouncement on that, and which shall be final, is the judiciary. However, my take is this. I think I'm seeing some games here. I am suspecting that NASA is being dragged by Jubilee into a hole. Because if you asked me, and I'm sure my friend here will agree with me, if elections were to be postponed from 8 to some other date, between NASA and Jubilee, who would benefit? I put it to you here now. It is Jubilee that will be happy with the postponement. Because if elections were held today, they will lose.
Okay, I'll stop you right there. Let's hear from Manu Magoma.
You know, sometimes you wonder where Manyora has come from. And you even wonder where they lived in this country. Let me first of all address the issue of the Chief Justice.
Correct.
I think that the Chief Justice, for the second time, has put himself in a situation where his comments are being misinterpreted or being said to mean something else. And he needs to stay away from speaking publicly and stay within the courts of law. Let him only sit, wait for cases before him, and make pronouncements on those cases based on the law, based on the constitution. In manner of him sitting the other day, he was in Homa Bay. He also made a certain declaration in Homa Bay. Now he was in Mombasa, he made a declaration. And people will interpret what he says based on the fact of the things that he says. And his comments, if you read his comments, are very clear. He said, why is IBC printing ballot papers for governor position? What if somebody has a case?
And I believe we have that clip where Maraga talked, and he has been explaining, denying this and explaining it. If you can listen to that, are we ready with that? Yeah.
The judiciary is ready, and it has completed with all the logistical issues. We will deal with those petitions and complete them within the time specified. Assume the IBC has printed ballot papers with the name of a governor on it, and then there is a petition against that governor, and it has come to court. That governor, according to the court, it should not be on the ballot paper, or somebody else should be on the ballot paper. It becomes untidy to add the name of that person and all that. We are endeavoring to do our best so that we don't cause problems for IBC.
Which means before he comes in,
it is not in the Chief Justice's place to assume. There's no assumptions in law. And secondly, it is not in his place to start managing the tidiness or untidiness of a ballot paper. That is not his mandate. That is the mandate of IBC.
Then you didn't get him right.
No, but those are the things he said.
You didn't get him right.
Unless my English shall lie to me. He said assume and untidy.
Come on. That's not what he said.
No.
All right. This is what he said. We need to clarify this, Hussein. He's saying, as the judiciary, they will need to do something so that they clear these cases, so that they do not get to a situation where, for example, they are still dilly-dallying, ballots are printed, and then they will have to deal with a case if the rulings then mean somebody else has to be out of the ballot or on the ballot. That's not the way you interpret it.
That should not be their problem.
You are giving the wrong interpretation.
In a matter that can be interpreted either way.
No, there's no either way. No, just one way.
Okay, this is actually it's important that we also say the Chief Justice has denied this, and he said, I'll read very quickly his statement. At no time did I ask the IBC not to proceed with the ballot printing, contrary to statements by Deputy President William Ruto and other politicians at Baringo. To the contrary, the comments, either deliberately or inadvertently taken out of context, were in reference to the court's efforts to expeditiously clear the numerous petitions arising from the party primaries in order not to inconvenience the printing of ballot papers.
Correct.
What the Jubilee team is arguing here,
yes.
Manyora, yes. For all of you now, I mean, the rest need to talk as well, is this happened days before the judgment or the ruling was made. Could there have been undue pressure on these judges before that ruling was made?
Thank you, Hussein. To my good professor, I think the one thing we should not shy or we should not run away from is to try and understand what Justice Maraga meant. You have a legal doctrine that you all know which talks about something called Uberrima Fides. Uberrima Fides, it's talking uttermost good faith. Now, hindsight, they say, is 2020. If today Justice Maraga was to be asked to repeat what he repeated in Mombasa to the judges, he would not do so, because he has learned one thing about our beautiful Kenyans. They will interpret things on their own. So, to many Kenyans and to the Jubilee Brigade, they are reading malice to the very fact that there is an element of preemptiveness in the utterances that Justice Maraga made. This election is a serious issue, and he understands that. So I am not denouncing the fact that he has come with an approach which many people would call a laissez-faire approach. All right? This is a serious issue, and people will interpret it the way they want. So if he was asked to repeat, my good professor, trust you me, he would not repeat that statement again. No, because utterances, if you look at 2007, the utterances that Kivuitu made actually led this country to almost a near civil strife. Utterances. So it matters a lot what you say, who you are, and these actually utterances were not made within the parentheses of a law court. So take it so seriously, because people will hear what they want to hear and they'll interpret things unevenly.
No, first of all, I think the statement made by the Chief Justice was clear, and I don't even know why the Chief Justice even attempted to substantiate them. One thing that should be remembered about this Chief Justice is that he understands elections. For a long time before, when he was the Court of Appeal judge, Justice Maraga was the chair of the Judiciary Committee on Elections, a committee that I think, in my own view, has actually done a lot of good work in streamlining the electoral process in this country. And one thing that we should not forget, that in our new constitutional arrangement, in our new constitutional dispensation, one of the reasons why it has been said time and again that Kenya has one of the best, the most beautiful, progressive and transformative constitution is because of the reorganization of the balance of power that it does. this, and I'm saying this with regard to the statements that were made by His Excellency the President, and even before the President and the Deputy President made these unfortunate statements today. Even NASA at some point made the statements when IBC sought to appeal the decision of the Court of Appeal in the High Court in the counting of at the constituency, at the county constituency level. In this new constitution, it has to be understood by everybody in this country that the powers of the judiciary to interpret this constitution, as Professor is saying, is absolute. And as because of that, it actually elevates the judiciary over and above the executive and the legislature, and certainly over the IEBC.
So that interpretation...
Felix. That is it. Look, you only need to look at it.
They're
Absolutely.
saying the interpretation by Jubilee is wrong.
It is wrong. And so what, look, why it is wrong is that and not just Jubilee, by the way. I take a view, I said when NASA went and challenged that, threatened that they will go to stage mass protest as a result of the decision by the judiciary. That was wrong.
That was also interfering with the
It is interfering with the judiciary. The independence of the judiciary is
for Felix to purport that the judiciary is above the other two arms of governance because of this book. The people who are above this are the Kenyan people.
Right.
The elections on August 8th belong to the Kenyans. And that cannot be taken away from Kenyans by whatsoever means. Elections must happen, and the constitution is very clear. That it does actually, let me tell you, it does not give you even a point for the judiciary to decide that the elections cannot happen on August 8th. It's very clear on what needs to happen. So, look, and Justice Maraga needs to stop moving to activism. If he needs to make proclamation, let him go to court.
Hussein, I think because viewers are really interested in us bringing this to a close, here is our Chief Justice addressing his officers, judges, telling them, look here, ladies and gentlemen, you are handling petitions arising out of the nominations. IBC has timelines to meet that include printing of ballot papers. Can you please speed up the hearing of those cases so that we don't get into an awkward situation where our ruling come after the fact? Gentlemen.
No, that's not what he said.
No, what he said. What you're saying is what he should have said, but it's not what he said.
It's not exactly. Very quickly. No. What you've just said, but you don't have to address IBC. Who's printing of the ballot papers? It's under IBC, and that's why I'm telling you. That's why I'm telling you, Professor. If we are talking about interpretation, trust you me, you'll understand it differently, and I'll understand it differently. And let me tell you where. And I'm not saying this is how Jubilee understood it. What they are talking about is the preemption. And here you have a 3-judge bench who probably, and I'm not saying this is what happened, I stand corrected, who looked at the utterances and what Justice Maraga said, and they looked at it and said, guess what? Our boss has issued a directive order. I am just telling you. They may not, that's not what happened. Hang on a minute. No, that's not what happened. And I'm not saying that's what happened, but I'm talking about the person, the layman interpreting. All right? And this is why you hear the president saying there is an element of...
The president is not a layman to that extent.
There's a misinterpretation here that actually also should be clarified. And this is with regard to the election state. The president and the deputy president, and I think you alluded to that, that the decision of the judiciary actually attempted to change the election state. That is a lie. If you look at the ruling of the Court of Appeal and the ruling by the High Court on this ballot paper tender, they were clear, they were categorical that the election date is cast in stone and it cannot change. So I think that is a misinterpretation that needs to be.
So maybe there's this worry about the time remaining, 29 days to the election, retendering and all that, but I'll come to that shortly. I want to ask another question here. IBC has said, I mean, people have been, this has also been a matter of interpretation. When they said they will appeal the High Court decision on public participation in procurement process, I would believe they're just saying they'll appeal the decision.
Right.
That was given on Friday, the ruling on Friday. So if IBC is appealing, isn't Jubilee also today, the utterances by President Kenyatta and Deputy President William Ruto, wouldn't they also be putting or exerting undue pressure
on the judiciary?
On the judiciary. Before this appeal?
No, it is not, because the matter is not yet before the judiciary.
But it will come before the judiciary, definitely.
Until that time, the matter is not yet before the judiciary. It is not before the... And they were addressing themselves to, one, the comments by the Chief Justice that he made in Mombasa. That's what they're addressing themselves to. And number two, reminding people that, look, August 8th is cast on stone.
Okay.
We cannot postpone.
Exactly.
Let's remember that.
So they have made this,
at the end of the day, let's remember that.
So they made these comments after the ruling on Friday.
Yes.
IBC is saying it will appeal that decision on Friday.
Yes.
They have made these comments and they've gone as far as to say Judiciary could be now working with the opposition to give verdicts that may see us postpone the election.
You talk about something.
Now, is that exerting pressure on the Judiciary when this appeal comes?
Just to make a comment about this thing of 8th cast in stone. Our constitution is very clear. I'm not a lawyer. There are only 1 or 2 or 3 things which you cannot touch.
Correct.
For example, say Kenya is not a country. Nobody can allow you. I think there's another 1 or 2, please. I think you're a lawyer. Tell us. There's another 1 or 2.
The term of office of the president.
No, those ones you can change even through a referendum. But there are other things you can't even change.
Yeah.
Like the boundaries of Kenya, like something like that. Like, I'm not a lawyer. But much as this date of 8th is important, it is something that our constitution can engage in court.
Professor, no.
Unfortunately, why not? Hussein, very quickly, let me just jump in on what all the chairman of IBC said, because I believe why they went
Was it not changed?
It was an interpretation of the.
Why they are saying they're running to court, there are 2 things that the chairman has raised, and for us to understand what he has just raised, we need to understand that the prayers were that heard by the court and actually the verdict that was given back. What the chairman is saying is this: we need the court again to interpret. That's why Wakili, I was thinking there's something
the right thing
that we need them to interpret something which, is not captured on the Public Procurement and Disposable Act. Not only that, they need to tell us how we need to go about the public participation. All right, public participation. It's not captured. And that's why he was very categorical when he said that we don't have a legislation or what you would call a policy framework for us identifying how we are going to go about this issue. So we need to go back to court.
You don't appeal. In that case, you don't appeal. You go to the same bench, the same court, and seek an interpretation or a clarification.
Then why did they do it when they were issuing that judgment?
For me, IBC for sure has taken the right. The chairperson, let me say, the chairperson has taken the right decision. One, he respected the verdict of the court. Whereas he signaled his intention to actually appeal, he is also simultaneously inviting the process of seeking or tendering for the presidential ballot. If only IBC did this in February, we would not have been in this situation. It's not the judiciary. If they went straight to commence, there was a ruling in February that allowed them to commence the tendering for the ballots. They waited until the last minute. Until May. Just hold on a second. So this is how it should be. But gentlemen, let us not forget. Today, it might actually be NASA against whom the finger of suspicion is pointed in terms of collusion with the judiciary. Next time, it might actually be Jubilee and in the opposition seeking the intervention of the judiciary to rein in the excesses of a NASA government. So we should not demonize the judiciary. We should respect the rule of law, and I think the judiciary is right. And I'm telling you, the measures that the judiciary has done to streamline the electoral process, maybe not this election, but from 2022, because of not what the IBC has done or the political parties has done, but what to a larger extent the judiciary has done.
You know what IBC should have done in February, and I disagree with him. IBC should have appealed the ruling of February 13th by Justice Odunga. Had they appealed that ruling to the very conclusion, because they didn't, then we'll not be where we are. That's number one. Number two, we say that they're going to seek clarification of what public participation is.
Exactly.
But sometimes we don't read as Kenyans. In 2014, Justice Odunga made a ruling on Gashuka versus Governor of Kiambu about public participation. And he was very clear in that ruling. He said public participation is not taking 5 people and putting them in an expensive hotel and you assume that is public participation. He also said that for you to do public participation, you must be able to engage people in churches, in their local gatherings, and through radio stations. And it is only at that point that will you have said that you've met the threshold of public participation.
Right. IBC, of course, tomorrow is holding meetings with all presidential candidates on this matter. I think this is how maybe they want to tackle this issue of public participation. They're also saying they'll invite the public to submit memorandum on procurement of presidential ballot papers by 11th July 2017 and public hearing on 12th July 2017. do we have enough time, because that has been cited several times, doing all this re-tendering 29 days to the election
before
and finally printing?
Before I talk about time,
yeah,
very quickly, this public participation, when the court says we are nullifying this because there was no public participation, it doesn't follow that you will have to do public participation. The situation that you now find yourself in will then have to be dealt with as it is, and there are sufficient laws that will allow you even to do the quick tendering, procurement, you know, without even consulting other forces. So I'm saying we are nullifying this because there was no public participation. It doesn't mean in the next phase there must be that public participation.
Somebody can just cite that and take them.
Exactly.
No.
Actually, if you look at the
judgment, now I'm coming to your time. There is sufficient time. What we lack is goodwill. What Chebukati has done is what he should have done all along. Call these fellows, say we now have only 24 days. How do we move from here so that nobody else complains? They agree on one table, then they find out how to procure the services, and the printing of 20 million ballot papers for the presidential election is something that can be done
but
in less than a week.
Chebukati did exactly that. Chebukati did that in, was it in June, when he called all the presidential candidates and he sat with them and they all agreed.
No, not in this
This issue you are raising was actually canvassed by the three-judge bench. And where IBC was faulted was that they actually called the Jubilee and the NASA presidential candidates, and that was it. Now, contrary to Odunga's ruling that you referred to, the judges attempted to clarify what amounts to public participation. And they told them, you don't have to interview or seek the opinion of all Kenyans.
True.
We leave it at your discretion to decide what amounts to an appropriate public participation. And that is why I think what the steps Chebukati has taken will not be faulted, because it's invited for the memorandum and it's inviting all the 8 presidential candidates. I think that would pass. And there is time. But time to procure presidential ballot papers, there is time. In 2013, don't forget, we procured all the ballot papers for 6 elective officers 21 days to the elections.
Okay, and as you respond, the biggest problem or the main issue here that took this to court was Al-Ghurair. Al-Ghurair can still retender. And they can still be awarded, isn't it?
Yes.
The tender.
Yes.
Right.
You see, and in fact, it's good you've raised that issue. The win on this case was on Dr. Ekuru Eukot's pleadings.
Right.
That there was no public participation. So all other issues about unfairness or one particular side being in bed with the other side were all thrown out.
Correct.
Okay. It's only because, and I suspect Ekuru Eukot must have read the constitution, because he was the secretary of the commission for the constitution back then. But having said that, we keep on saying there's time, but what we forget is our desire to litigate almost everything. And I won't be surprised that even if this tender is awarded to whosoever it is awarded to, somebody else will go to court to challenge that award. Because every challenge in the ballot paper has not been about the process, has not been about the integrity of the process, but about other peripheral things that have all been thrown out.
What is lacking, Hussein, is goodwill and common sense.
I mean, how can we accept
goodwill for the politicians? No, this is our country, all of us. This is our country, all of us. We cannot destroy this country because of small things. Elections come and go. Common sense to tell us when a company has been soiled in the manner this Al-Ghurair thing has been soiled. You don't look at technicalities and legalities. You just don't deal with it.
Let me ask you, why would we accept Al-Ghurair to print for MCAs and not for the president? Are we saying that MC are less a human being?
Very quickly, I told you there's lack of people not understanding or interpreting this matter seriously, and this is why I keep saying too much information, very little knowledge. Manuel has actually alluded to something which many people don't know. They're walking by the streets of this great city, they're talking about IBC, but they do not understand that, number one, I saw some people, jumping and saying that they had won. I saw on the newspapers printing that a certain group had won, but he said it very rightly here, and I would hope many Kenyans would see to this, that the person whose prayers were actually given by the court was Mr. Ekot. And before people start dancing to the midnight oil, the 2 major prayers that were issued Number one is that Al Ghurair and the president's family were in cahoots, was thrown out with the contempt that it came in with, and my good Wakili can attest to that. The second one was that there was an issue of underhanding in giving out that tender to Al Ghurair. The same thing, the same judiciary actually threw that.
Those details are not important.
No. They are actually important because you see, that is important. That is our problem. It's thrown out. It does not matter just because it's a technicality. It is important. It is important in this way. Manoa has again alluded to the fact that once this is out, somebody will also go to court. That's why you need these details. People need to understand.
What is important?
Hang on a minute. Once you're able to do that, there's somebody who's sitting somewhere and writing and saying, once they finish this, this is what we are presenting. Again, so the time factor actually is very important. Yes, we can agree that the printing of the presidential ballot papers was to begin on the 18th. But now, today, being the 9th, you are looking at a very small window.
Okay.
Now, Al Ghurair, and I had the same people, a presidential candidate, saying that no, we should let the United Nations run this election. Guess what? If you give it to the United Nations today, and that's why I'm telling you, too much information, very little knowledge. United Nations, the first printing company they will go to, you know which one it is? It's Al Ghurair. Why? It's their preferred printing company. Okay. They have done this across Africa. Al Ghurair. Go look it up.
I don't think it enjoys that very serious credibility.
We'll have it leave it there, but I'll give Phyllis the last word to respond to this. Jubilee has talked about judiciary today. They've been accusing NASA of doing the same. Yeah. NASA has also done it. NASA has also said Jubilee wants to postpone elections. They've said it before. Jubilee has said NASA wants to postpone elections. When the ruling was, before the ruling was made on the tallying, on the whether constituencies can be the tallying centers, I mean, the tallying will be final at the constituency level, NASA actually almost threatened the judiciary. I remember we did that show here, and there was a problem when NASA said they will not allow, if a ruling is made, that the votes tallying from the constituency level should be varied at the national tallying center. Many people have been talking about this. Now we are seeing both Jubilee and NASA castigating the judiciary, both trading accusations in terms of this one is trying to postpone election, this one is trying to postpone the election. How dangerous is this?
It is dangerous, and the reason why it's dangerous is that the leadership of this country, in the name of the person of the president and the leader of the official opposition, who technically is Raila Odinga, these are people who command substantial respect in this country and substantial following. Their word in certain places amounts to law, or they are almost like deity. Now, it grossly undermines the rule of law and constitutionalism, because if you're a layman and you see your president saying that the decision of the judiciary will not be respected, then it sends very bad signals. Or if it is the person of the leader of the opposition, who in this case is Prime Minister Raila Odinga. Both Jubilee and NASA are wrong about the understanding of the role of the judiciary in our new dispensation. And to the extent that they both agree with them, I think, if for nothing else, attest to the independence of the judiciary.
Okay, we'll have to leave it there.
No, I just need to clarify.
Okay, very briefly.
Clear. You need to make a difference. What NASA threatened was to disrespect the ruling of the judiciary. What Jubilee said is that the judiciary should not be used to scatter elections. Those are two different things. Those are two different things.
We go back to interpretation. I told you.
We've got to be clear about it.
I want to tell you the most important thing would have been, not what we have been discussing, would have been that there is the possibility of postponing this election.
You cannot postpone an election. That will not be postponed.
That possibility.
No. There is no that possibility. Elections are going to be held on August 8th. Absolutely. I mean, who has the time to start doing? No, but who has the time? There's no possibility.
Felix is an electoral expert. Thank you for making time for us tonight. And political analyst Manwa Magoma, Haman Manyora, and Gabriel Muluma. Thank you so much. Keep talking to us. The hashtag is GamePlan 2017 on Twitter, and you can text us on 22422. We're back after this break.